basic argumentation of this case, let's get the context out of the way, right? So let's look at the world as we know it today. It's become a capitalist bubble where opportunists strike at every nook and cranny, right? We think that capitalism has become the basic principle driving force in economics in the world today. And we think that that has caused a vicious cycle of poverty and people feeding off of one another to reap higher profits. We think that that is something that this side of the house stands against today, and it's something that we will work towards eliminating entirely, right? So how does this mechanism exactly work, right? We think that in countries like developing countries like India and Pakistan and other third world countries, this capitalism, this principle of capitalism that basically talks about that basically implies some rich people feeding off other exploiting labor and feeding off of their work and reaping higher profits is what has caused us to what has caused this vicious cycle of poverty to come about. We think that that's something that is an inherent problem, and we want to level the playing field today in order and bring everyone to an equitable level of wealth in order for this and prove the principle of morality to you in order to take the debate today, right? So we think that the context mainly is developing countries, but it's not limited to developing countries. We think that this mechanism applies to all those countries where people are living under the poverty line, where there's a very bad distribution of wealth and income, and we want to correct that and bring everyone to an equitable level, right? So what is the policy we have for you today? What are basic needs, right? We think that these are deficiency needs, for example, food, shelter, clothing, but we're not saying that we're going to give you the bare minimum. We think that you're going to live comfortably, but not luxuriously. We think that you have everything you need to live a comfortable life and be content with how you're living, but not luxuriously, right? We think that a BMW is not a necessity. We think that you can also survive on a Mehran or any other or basic needs, right? We don't think that a five bedroom apartment is a basic need, right? No, thank you. We think that education and other such merit goods are a basic necessity, and that's something that the government is responsible for providing to you. So, and we think that we think that beyond this, everything, all your wealth is going to be donated to the government, which means that the government will have more resources to allocate and ensure more equitable distribution of wealth, right? So what is the argument we have for you today? We think that the basic principle argument today is that of morality, right? Who decides what morality is, and why it's necessary for people to live by this moral compass, right? We think that in status quo, everyone does live by a basic moral code. That's what constitutes an orderly world, right? The very reason we don't have murder, plunder, and other we have a respect for people's property and other rights is because we live by this moral code and we comply to this moral code. That's why we don't live in a chaotic world, right? We think that we think that it's necessary for this moral code to be imposed, and it's not only limited to murder and to such crimes and such impeachment of people's rights. We think that this moral code also encompasses everything dealing with being mindful of other people and equity, right? We think that it's necessary that everyone having basic needs is also part of this moral code, and it's a responsibility of everyone in a community, in a society, to be mindful of everyone else's basic needs as well. We think that sure, some people are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and some people work towards their wealth or whatever, right? But we think that at the end of the day, there is inequality in the world, and there are some people living in extreme poverty, which there is a need to correct. We think that it's necessary, it's part of this moral code for these rich people to be mindful of these poor people's needs as well, and to provide for their betterment, right? We think that this exploitation of labor that constitutes a capitalist economy or capitalist principle and to reap profits is something that undermines this moral code, and we think that to compensate for it, it's necessary for these individuals who have been abundantly privileged with this we don't think that there's a distinction between the government and the people. At the end of the day, this government is representative of you, and it comes from within you. We think that the government is that this morality, this responsibility of morality, does not solely lie on the shoulders of the government. We think that people also have to work towards shouldering some of this morality, shouldering some of the responsibility of this morality in order to improve the society and ensure the best kind of functioning of the community, of the society. We think that it's necessary for the people to play an active role in order to facilitate the government in its responsibility as well. And we think that people are an equal player in this mechanism. So right, what's the third thing we're talking to you about, right? We think that our model is the best way to alleviate poverty, which is our end goal at the end of the day, because the other alternatives which are implemented in status quo are failing direly, right? Two examples: charity and taxation, right? We think charity doesn't achieve the end goal as best as we want it to, because we think that a lot of value judgment is involved when it comes to charity, right? We think that it's these rich, privileged people who have the discretion to decide who they want to give this money to, how much of the money they want to give. No, thank you. How much of the money they want to give, and it doesn't. And the scope of this charity is very limited. We think that it's not as widespread as this mechanism would be, right? And then taxation. We think that because you're paying only a certain percentage of your income in taxation, the government doesn't have enough resources to reallocate to people, which at the end of the day involves opportunity cost. And governments choose to invest in certain sectors and not in others, which at the end of the day doesn't really help the poor. We think that this mechanism at the end of the day, which is our end goal to alleviate poverty, is the best way to do so, because whatever excess wealth you have beyond your basic needs goes to helping these poor people and to alleviating poverty, right? We think that on a second level, when these people who are living in dire conditions now have to stop worrying about their immediate future and their immediate gratification, we think that they will have the opportunity to look to deferred gratification and other things in life like education and to move forward in life. We think that it's necessary for us to provide for that, facilitate them in that regard, in order for this cycle of poverty that we're so against on side opposition today to end entirely, right? And that is what